Commander Vex stood at the edge of the training ground, his four eyes scanning the newest batch of recruits at the Galactic Defense Academy. This was always his favorite part of the cycle, watching fresh cadets from across the galaxy line up for their first taste of real military training. The morning sun cast long shadows across the metallic floor as beings from dozens of different worlds shuffled into formation. The Bruthan warriors dominated one section of the line. It's massive. Creatures stood nearly 8 feet tall, their thick exoskeletons gleaming under the artificial lights. Each one weighed close to 400 pounds of pure muscle and bone, evolved on a world where everything tried to kill everything else. They were the backbone of most galactic military units, and they knew it. Their confidence showed in every movement next to them. The Altarian pilots looked like living works of art, tall and graceful, with hollow bones designed for flight. They moved with an elegance that made even simple walking look like dancing. Their homeworld had low gravity and thin air, producing beings who could soar through the sky with ease. In space combat, there were no better pilots in the known galaxy. Scattered among these impressive specimens were representatives from a dozen other species, Calorian nobles with their crystal-like skin that could deflect energy weapons, Vorthok traders whose thick hides could survive in the vacuum of space for short periods, Zephyrian scouts with enhanced senses that could detect movement from miles away, and then there was Jake Martinez. The human stood somewhere in the middle of the formation. Vex had to actually look for him among the other recruits. At barely 5'8", Jake seemed almost comically small compared to his fellow trainees. His brown hair was cut short in military fashion, and his dark eyes held a calm confidence that seemed out of place given his size. He wore the standard academy uniform, but on his smaller frame. It looked like he was playing dress-up in adult clothes. Vex had read Jake's file earlier that morning. The human came from a place called Earth, a world that most galactic databases listed as marginally habitable. High gravity, dangerous weather patterns, and an ecosystem where predators hunted in packs. Most civilized species wouldn't consider colonizing such a hostile environment, yet somehow humans had not only survived there, but thrived. The other instructors had their doubts about including humans in the program. They were new to the galactic community, having only made contact 3 years ago. Their technology was primitive by galactic standards, their ships barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Some questioned whether they deserved a place among the elite species that made up the Galactic Defense Corps. Drill Sergeant Korth stepped forward, his massive frame casting a shadow over the front row of recruits. The Bruthan's voice boomed across the training ground like thunder. "Welcome to hell, maggots. For the next 6 months, this academy will push you beyond your limits. We will break you down and build you back up into proper defenders of galactic peace." His mandibles clicked together as he paced back and forth, studying each recruit. "Today, we start with enhanced gravity training. The simulation chamber will be set to double your species' normal gravity. This will separate the warriors from the weaklings." Few of the recruits shifted nervously. Double gravity was no joke. Even the mighty Bruthans would feel the strain, and for species like the Altarians, it could be genuinely dangerous. I hate this. Was designed to be the first major test, the one that would send some cadets packing before they even got started. Jake raised his hand with a casual, almost lazy motion. The gesture was so natural and relaxed that it took a moment for everyone to notice. When they did, a strange quiet fell over the formation. "Sir," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly in the morning air, "could we bump that up to triple gravity? Instead, double feels a bit light for proper training." The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Commander Vex felt his eyebrows rise in surprise. In his 20 years of running the academy, no recruit had ever asked for the training to be made harder on the first day. Most were trying to figure out how to survive what was already planned. Sergeant Korth's mandibles clicked rapidly, the Bruthan equivalent of laughter. The sound was like metal grinding against stone. "You sure about that, tiny one? At triple gravity? Will crush most beings flat." Jake shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Yeah, my high school football team practiced at 2.8 G. This should be fun." The other recruits stared at him like he had just announced his intention to juggle live plasma grenades. The massive training chamber door sealed shut with a heavy clang that echoed through the metallic walls. Red warning lights flickered on around the perimeter, casting an ominous glow over the assembled recruits. The air itself seemed to shimmer. As the gravity generators powered up, their deep humming growing louder by the second. Commander Vex watched from the observation deck above, his fingers dancing across the control panel. The display showed gravity levels climbing steadily from normal to double, then continuing upward toward triple. He had run this simulation thousands of times, but never at these settings. Most species couldn't even survive triple gravity, let alone train in it. Jake stood in the center of the chamber, rolling his shoulders and stretching his arms like he was getting ready for a casual morning jog. The other recruits watched him, with a mixture of disbelief and growing concern. Some were already bracing themselves against the walls, preparing for what was coming. The gravity hit like an invisible hammer. The massive Bruthan warriors, each one a walking tank of muscle and bones, suddenly found their legs wobbling beneath them. Their exoskeletons, designed to protect them in the harshest combat environments, now felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds each. One by one, they dropped to their knees with groans that sounded like grinding metal. Their breathing became labored, each breath a struggle against the crushing force pressing down on their chests. The elegant Altarians fared even worse. Their hollow bones, perfect for flight in their homeworld's light gravity, began to creak and bend under the impossible weight. Several collapsed completely, their graceful forms crumpled on the cold floor like broken birds. Their pilot reflexes, so quick and precise in normal conditions, were now useless against the relentless pull dragging them down. The Calorian nobles, their crystal-like skin that could deflect energy weapons, found that their natural armor meant nothing against gravity. They struggled to remain standing, their usual arrogant postures reduced to desperate hunching as they fought just to keep upright. Sweat began to form on their translucent faces, something most had never experienced before. Even the thick-skinned Vorthok traders, beings who could survive brief exposure to the vacuum of space, were reduced to crawling on their bellies. Their natural resilience meant nothing when the very air around them seemed to have turned to liquid metal, pressing down with crushing force from every direction. Throughout the chamber, aliens who had never known defeat were learning what helplessness felt like. Warriors who had conquered planets were defeated by an invisible enemy they couldn't fight or overcome through strength alone. The sound of labored breathing filled the air, mixed with groans of pain and the occasional whimper of distress. And then there was Jake. The human began with jumping jacks, his movements smooth and controlled. His feet hit the floor with steady rhythm while around him, beings twice his size struggled just to lift their heads. He counted out loud in a cheerful voice, completely unbothered by the crushing force that was destroying everyone else in the room. After 50 jumping jacks, he dropped down for push-ups. His form was perfect, back straight, arms moving in controlled motions as he lifted and lowered his body weight, plus the crushing gravitational force. The Bruthan cadets watched in amazement through their face shields, unable to understand how this small creature could move so easily when they could barely breathe. Jake finished his push-ups and transitioned into a light jog around the perimeter of the chamber. His breathing remained steady and controlled, in through the nose, out through the mouth, just like his old coach had taught him. His feet hit the ground in a regular pattern, each step confident and sure, while aliens around him fought just to remain conscious. Sergeant Korth, the massive Bruthan drill instructor, who had seemed so intimidating just minutes before, was now on his hands and knees, struggling to keep his head up. His voice, which had boomed across the training ground like thunder, was now reduced to a strained whisper as he fought against the crushing weight. "Martinez," he managed to bellow, though the sound came out more like a wheeze. His mandibles clicked weakly as he tried to understand what he was seeing. "What kind of death world did you crawl out of?" Jake slowed his jog to a walk, not even, breathing hard. He looked around at the struggling aliens with genuine concern, like he was worried he might have made things too difficult for them. "Colorado, sir," he replied in a conversational tone. though I did summer training in the Rockies at about 2G equivalent. My coach said it would help with our conditioning for the state championships. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of aliens gasping for air and the steady hum of the gravity generators. The medical bay buzzed with activity as alien cadets recovered from their first encounter with triple gravity. Healing pods hummed softly while treating strained muscles, cracked exoskeletons, and bruised egos.
Altarians
Needed special bone strengthening treatments, while the Bruthans required muscle relaxants for their overstressed limbs. Even the mighty Calorians sat quietly, their crystal-like skin dulled from exhaustion. Jake sat on a simple bench in the corner, completely fine, and slightly bored. He had offered to help the medical staff, but they seemed more interested in studying him than accepting his assistance. 3 different species of doctors had already taken scans of his bone density, muscle composition, and cardiovascular system, muttering to each other in languages he couldn't understand. Jake called out to a group of recovering cadets. Nearby, pulling out his personal tablet, "Want to see what training looks like back home? Might help explain why that felt so easy." The alien recruits gathered around with curiosity and no small amount of suspicion. They had just experienced what they considered torture, and this small human was acting like it had been a gentle morning stroll. Several species had theories about humans being secretly enhanced or artificially modified, but Jake seemed genuinely eager to share his background. The tablet screen flickered to life, showing a bright green field under blue sky. Young humans, barely adults, ran across the grass while wearing heavy padding and helmets. They crashed into each other with impacts that made the aliens flinch involuntarily. The sound of bodies colliding echoed from the small speakers, followed by cheers from crowds of spectators. "This is football from my old high school," Jake explained casually. "I played linebacker, which means I was supposed to run into the biggest guys on the other team and knock them down. That's me, number 42. On screen, a slightly younger Jake sprinted across the field and collided with an opponent who outweighed him by at least 50 pounds. The impact would have shattered most alien bones, but both humans bounced back up immediately and returned to their positions. The alien cadets stared in stunned silence. A Vorthok cadet, his thick hide still showing stress marks from the gravity training, pointed at the screen with a shaking finger. Those impacts would kill most species. "You're young. Do this for entertainment?" "Well, it's competitive sports, but yeah, it's pretty fun," Jake replied, scrolling to the next video. "Wait, this is even better. Watch this." The screen now showed a large gymnasium filled with equipment that looked like medieval torture devices. Young humans swung from bars, flipped through the air, and twisted their bodies in ways that seemed to violate basic physics. A girl who couldn't have been older than 16 launched herself off a springboard, spun through the air 3 times, and landed perfectly on a narrow beam. "Gymnastics," Jake said proudly. "My little sister does this. Only 14. But she can do stuff that would make your head spin. Literally." The alien cadets watched in growing horror as more videos played. Humans jumping off cliffs with only fabric wings, diving into water from heights that should have been fatal, and running races while carrying weights that would crush most galactic species. Each activity was presented as normal recreation, something humans did for fun in their spare time. "This is impossible," whispered a Calorian noble, his crystal skin flickering with stress patterns. "Your species should have gone extinct millions of years ago." Jake laughed and swiped to a new video. "Oh, this is my dad. He works construction in the Denver Gravitational Enhancement Zone. Check this out." The screen showed a middle-aged human man, clearly related to Jake based on their similar features, working on what appeared to be a massive building project. He moved with confident steps along narrow beams hundreds of feet above the ground, carrying heavy equipment that would require machines for most species to lift. The job site indicators showed the gravity was set to 3.2 times Earth normal. "Oh, Dad's been doing this for 20 years, Jake said with obvious pride. He says working in enhanced gravity keeps his bones strong and his muscles young. Most of the construction crew are guys in their 50s and 60s who could still beat college athletes in most physical competitions. The video showed Jake's father casually lifting a steel beam that 6 Bruthans would struggle to move in normal gravity. then walking across a narrow support cable like he was strolling through a park. Other human workers moved around the site with the same casual efficiency, treating the crushing gravitational force as just another day at the office. A Bruthan cadet, still connected to a muscle relaxation unit, spoke in a voice filled with disbelief. Your parent does this every day, as employment. 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, Jake confirmed, though he takes vacation time to go mountain climbing, as his office work makes him feel soft. The Vorthok cadet, who had spoken earlier, stared at the screen where Jake's father was now doing maintenance work while hanging upside down from a crane. Your species does this for recreation? He repeated, his voice hollow with shock. Jake grinned and started scrolling through more videos. Wait until you see our extreme sports. Ever heard of something called free solo rock climbing? The news traveled through the Galactic Defense Academy like wildfire. Within hours of the gravity training incident, every cadet, instructor, and support staff member had heard about the small human who casually requested triple gravity and then used it for his warm-up routine. The story grew with each telling, but the core facts remained the same and equally unbelievable. Jake found himself at the center of attention wherever he went. In the mess hall, conversations would stop when he walked by, alien eyes following his every movement, as if he might spontaneously demonstrate some impossible feat of strength. Some cadets approached him with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with something that looked remarkably like fear. The change in how others treated him became obvious during the second week of training. Jake was stretching before morning exercises when Thok, a massive Bruthan warrior, approached hesitantly. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall and weighed 4 times what Jake did, but he moved with the careful respect usually reserved for dangerous predators. Human Jake, Thok said in his rumbling voice, his mandibles clicking nervously. I have watched your movements in heavy gravity. My species is trained for war for thousands of years, but we struggle where you dance. Would you share your techniques? Looked up in surprise. Back home, he had been decent at sports, but never the star athlete. The idea of teaching combat techniques to an alien warrior who could probably bench press a small car seemed absurd. Sure, I guess. What did you want to know? What followed was an impromptu lesson that drew a crowd. Jake demonstrated how to shift weight distribution to maintain balance under crushing gravity, how to use breathing techniques to keep oxygen flowing to muscles under stress, and how to move efficiently without wasting energy fighting the downward pull. His explanations were simple and practical, learned from years of playing sports in Colorado's high-altitude and enhanced gravity training facilities. The Bruthan warriors watched with intense focus as Jake showed them exercises their own military had never developed. He taught them how to roll with impacts instead of absorbing them directly, how to use momentum rather than fighting against it, and how to maintain situational awareness even when every step required conscious effort. Within days, other species began asking for similar help. The Altarians, with their flight-adapted bodies, struggled most with heavy gravity training. Jake worked with them to adapt their natural reflexes, showing them how to use their quick reactions in environments where their wings were useless. He taught them ground-based movement patterns that their species had never needed to develop. Think of it like swimming through thick liquid instead of flying through air, Jake explained to a group of frustrated Altarian pilots. You're not fighting the gravity, you're moving through it. Use those same reflexes you have in the air, just apply them differently. The breakthrough came when one of the Altarians managed to complete the obstacle course in double gravity without collapsing. Word of Jake's teaching methods spread even faster than the original story about his impossible physical abilities. Commander X and the other instructors began observing these informal training sessions with growing interest. I had spent decades developing training protocols for different species, accounting for various physical limitations and advantages, yet here was a first-year cadet solving problems their experts hadn't even recognized existed. Sergeant Korth approached Jake after one particularly successful session where he had helped a group of mixed species cadets complete an exercise that usually had a 50% failure rate. Martinez, the massive Bruthan said, his voice carrying a respect that hadn't been there weeks before. Your methods are being studied by our tactical development team. They want to understand how your species approaches physical challenges. Jake scratched his head, still not entirely comfortable with all the attention. I just showed them stuff my high school coach taught us. It's not exactly rocket science. The irony wasn't lost on the instructors. What humans considered basic athletic training was revolutionizing galactic military education. The real test of Jake's new status came during Week 3, when Prince Zelthor of the Calorian royal family decided to make his displeasure known. The prince, whose crystal-like skin marked him as nobility among his people, had been struggling with the physical requirements of the academy. His family's wealth and political connections had gotten him admitted, but they couldn't help him complete a single pull-up in enhanced gravity. His training is barbaric, Prince Zelthor announced loudly during morning exercises, his crystal skin flickering with indignant patterns. No civilized being should be expected to endure such primitive conditions. I demand modifications to account for my species' natural limitations. The training ground fell silent. Every species had physical limitations, and the academy had always made reasonable accommodations. But asking for special treatment based on royal status was different. And everyone knew it. Sergeant Korth looked across the training ground to where Jake was casually performing one-handed handstand push-ups while balancing on a narrow beam in double gravity. The human's breathing was steady and controlled, like he was doing light stretches before a real workout. The Bruthan sergeant's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Your Highness," he said in his booming voice, "the human calls this light cardio. Perhaps you should speak with him about proper training techniques." Prince Zelthor's crystal skin dimmed with embarrassment as every eye in the training ground turned to watch Jake effortlessly complete his exercise routine. The gleaming bronze plaque mounted near the entrance of the Galactic Defense Academy's main training facility had become something of a pilgrimage site. Cadets from across the galaxy would stop to read the simple inscription, Martinez Standard. Training Protocol, established year 2387, in recognition of revolutionary advances in multi-species physical conditioning. Below the text was a small holographic display showing Jake demonstrating basic exercises that had transformed military training throughout known space. Jake walked past the plaque every morning on his way to the instructor's lounge, still slightly embarrassed by all the attention. 6 months had passed since his first day as a confused recruit, and now he wore the dark blue uniform of a certified training specialist. The transformation hadn't just been in his status, though. The entire academy had changed around him. Where? Once the training grounds echoed with the groans of struggling cadets, now they buzzed with focused determination. Species that had never worked together before were partnering up, sharing techniques that Jake had taught them. Bruthan warriors helped Altarian pilots with strength training, while the pilots taught the ground pounders about spatial awareness and quick reflexes. Even the proud Calorian nobles had learned to work alongside other species, their royal arrogance replaced with grudging respect for effective methods. The morning briefing room filled with the usual mix of instructors preparing for another day of training. Commander Vex nodded to Jake as he entered, a gesture of professional respect that still felt surreal. Just months ago, the four-eyed commander had watched Jake with curiosity and mild concern. Now he consulted with him on curriculum development and policy changes. "We have a special group coming in today," Commander Vex announced to the assembled instructors. Elite Bruthan shock troops, already conditioned for heavy combat. They've been through advanced military training on their homeworld and specifically requested our program after hearing about the improvements we've made. Jake looked up from his tablet where he had been reviewing the day's training schedule. Elite Bruthans were no joke. These weren't academy cadets looking to join the Galactic Defense Forces. These were seasoned warriors who had already proven themselves in real combat situations. They were coming here to get better, which meant they expected to be challenged. "How many?" asked Instructor Kelm, a Vorthok veteran who had initially been skeptical of Jake's methods but had become one of his strongest supporters after seeing the results. 12, Commander Vex replied. "All volunteers from their Special Forces units. They've been told about our enhanced training protocols but seem confident they can handle whatever we throw at them." Jake made a note on his tablet. 12 elite. Bruthans meant he would need to adjust the training scenarios and probably bump up the gravity settings earlier than usual. These weren't fresh recruits who needed time to adapt. They were professionals who would expect to be pushed to their limits from day one, 2 hours later. Jake stood at the edge of the training ground, watching the new arrivals line up for orientation. The Bruthen Special Forces soldiers were impressive, even by their species standards. Each one stood over 8 feet tall, their black exoskeletons polished to a mirror shine. Their movements were precise and coordinated, the result of years of military drilling. When they spoke, it was in the clipped, efficient tones of experienced soldiers. Their squad leader, a massive warrior whose exoskeleton bore the scars of multiple combat engagements, stepped forward to address the academy instructors. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had never met a challenge he couldn't overcome. "I am Battle Leader Korax of the 9th Bruthen Shock Division," he announced, his mandibles clicking with military precision.
Oh.
"My warriors have completed enhanced conditioning protocols that would break lesser beings. We have fought in the gravity wells of gas giants and the crushing depths of ocean worlds. We come here not because we need basic training, but because we have heard of new techniques that might make us even more effective." The other Bruthens nodded in agreement, their postures radiating confidence. These were beings who had earned their elite status through combat and hardship, had survived training that killed weaker candidates and battles that would be remembered in their military histories. They expected to impress the academy instructors and probably learn a few minor techniques before moving on to their next assignment. Jake stepped forward with his characteristic polite smile, the same expression that had become legendary among academy graduates. It was the smile that preceded revelations that shattered preconceptions and left the galaxy's toughest warriors questioning everything they thought they knew about physical limits. "That's great to hear," Jake said in his friendly, conversational tone. "Sounds like you guys are ready for our intermediate training program then. Start with some basic conditioning exercises at about 4G, which should feel pretty comfortable for elite soldiers like yourselves." He paused, still smiling as he consulted his tablet. "It's the same gravity level my little sister's dance class uses back home for their recital preparations. She's 12 and practices about 3 hours a day at that setting to build the strength for her aerial routines." The confident expressions on the Bruthen warriors' faces began to shift subtly. Battle Leader Korax's mandibles stopped clicking as the implications of Jake's casual comment sank in. Around the training ground, other instructors began to smile. They had seen this moment play out dozens of times with different groups, and it never got old. The terrible truth was beginning to dawn on the elite Bruthen shock troops when a human described something as an intermediate level or mentioned that children did it for fun. The rest of the galaxy should be very, very worried about what was coming next.